On Wednesday, we got some very interesting information that was introduced as evidence by prosecutors in Chicago of the spoofing trial for another precious metal trader being accused of market manipulation or spoofing of gold and silver paper markets. Remember that despite a mountain of evidence that Deutsche Bank handed over, and there were over 350,000 documents and 75 recorded audio conversations as evidence, an enormous amount of evidence supporting market manipulation. There was a RICO investigation. Normally that is very, very serious for the US federal government. When there's a RICO investigation, there's mandatory sentencing guidelines. And yet the trader last month was only sentenced, despite pleading guilty, to a 1 year and 1 day prison sentence. And Deutsche Bank was only fined $60 million. That's it, for billions of dollars in profits of market manipulation. Meanwhile, as Craig Hemke posted in charts earlier today on Thursday, July 22nd, precious metal markets, there's continued manipulation in overnight trading early in the morning, late overnight, where they attempt to bomb the futures markets before COMEX opens. So unfortunately, this continues. What we found out on Wednesday was that chat logs introduced as evidence show the traders bragging to each other how easy it is to manipulate precious metal prices. And the judge who sentenced the trader last month, the judge admitted that there was a lot of crimes. And it seemed from the comments in the article last month that I covered in a previous video, and I'll attach a link to it at the end of this video, the judge was basically admitting that there was a lot of crimes here and also that their hands were tied. That's the way it seemed to me. So you have the banks that basically own both political parties, and they can get away with all types of rules changes, goalpost moving, bailouts, market manipulations, and all they do is pay a tiny fraction of a fine relative to the profits that they get for manipulating markets. You have JP Morgan and other large banks that were fined billions of dollars for manipulating currency markets and other markets. But what are their profits? Their profits were obviously many times. So unfortunately, this is going to continue, but I got to give props and respect to the Wall Street silver crowd because they are bringing awareness to it, and the more physical metal, the more physical silver that retail investors buy, the actual metal, coins and bars, and the more silver bars that the Sprott Physical Silver Trust buys, silver prices will not totally collapse then, as they would have in the past, or the damage to the paper price in the past, many years ago. It used to take 6 months, a year, 2 years for the chart damage for paper price smashes to get repaired. Now within a couple weeks or at most a couple months, the chart damage is getting repaired compared to the past. So the silver price is making higher lows, I would say, compared to the past. These paper price smashes, these manipulations are far less effective now than they were compared to years ago. So that is a good thing. But if you want to be pissed off, you want to be annoyed, you want to be disgusted, go ahead and read more of some of the chat transcripts between these traders bragging about how easy it is to manipulate gold and silver markets. And remember, this was a RICO investigation for the US federal government. And normally RICO investigations, at least in the past, they had very strict mandatory sentencing guidelines. In the past, a lot of RICO cases meant at least 10 or 20 years in prison. Now it seems that sentencing guidelines are normally a lot less strict than that. But for a white-collar criminal at a bank that made billions of dollars in profits manipulating gold and silver markets, and they pled guilty, they admitted they did it, to only get a year and a day in prison. And the judge to make the comments they did last month, saying that there were clearly more crimes committed there and only still sentenced a year and a day, is very messed up. It shows how messed up the entire system is. So not just the U.S. financial system, also the U.S. justice system. It really is just us. You have to have a lot of money to get justice here. But these gold and silver traders should not be getting such light sentences for clear market manipulation. And they're pleading guilty too. Finally, if you like content like this and want to help keep content like this free so it doesn't all end up behind a paywall because YouTube wants to make sure I can't make a living making these videos and my channel doesn't grow, I hardly add any new subscribers, or you want far more in-depth content, research, financial education, and analysis than I can provide in these short little free videos. And trust me, my articles behind the paywall over on my Patreon for only $5 a month are far more in-depth than these short little videos. It is only $5 a month to become a patron. There is over 170 articles, charts, and audio podcasts behind the paywall, including 21 new articles out in the last 8 or so weeks on gold mining, silver mining, precious metal royalty and streaming companies, the oil industry, uranium companies, copper mining costs, and global macro. So a lot of interesting topics. I charge less than anyone in the space for premium content. There's a lot of people who are patrons who tell me I should raise the prices, that I should double or triple the prices. So you are getting a lot of value there for what I charge. And if you don't like it, you can always cancel, although I think you're really going to like it. I try to provide a lot of value for the price. It is the cost of a Starbucks cup of coffee. Pretty much everyone can afford a Starbucks cup of coffee a month, even if you're on a fixed income. So thank you everyone for listening. So if I could wrap up this short little video, if you pay attention to all the details of precious metal market manipulation, you're just going to get really angry, really pissed, really frustrated, and you might give up buying physical gold and silver. However, there are companies that actually benefit from all this. Take a look at the long-term chart of Franco-Nevada. Despite enormous precious metal market manipulation in gold and silver, the long-term stock chart of Franco-Nevada is up 7-fold since 2009. It's up enormously. I think it was $20 a share or something in 2009. It's up to around 150. So there are specific business models, companies within the gold and silver space, not gold miners, that benefit from this. Also, Sprott Inc., which is the custodian of the Sprott Physical Silver Trust. There's going to be more ounces of physical silver that go into the Sprott Physical Silver Trust in the coming months. Maybe Sprott Inc. should use that $4 billion on their shelf offering and go and buy metal now, clean it out, buy a ton of metal, physical silver, with that $4 billion worth of units that they can sell. And the more metal that's in the Sprott Physical Silver Trust, the more in fees that Sprott Inc. gets to collect. So there's going to be winners and losers, regardless of precious metal market manipulation. And most people in the gold and silver space actually hate a lot of the companies that I like. That's the funny thing. I actually see tons of public comments bashing royalty and streaming companies. And it's almost always from paid newsletter writers that recommend nothing but junior mining stocks.